The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
The mind of Pat Popolizio is a wondrous thing. And for you Pack wrestling fans, you'll get to go inside the mind of the Skip each and every episode here on the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. Now, here's your host, NC State Director of Athletics Digital Communications, Brian Reinhardt.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. I'm your host, Brian Reinhardt, and with me, the head coach of the Wolfpack, Pat Popolizio.
Brian, how we doing today?
Pat, it's a hectic time. You know, football's off to a 5-0 start. You guys are about to start practice. Go Pack redesign. I have no time, but you tell me to come over, tape a podcast. I'm here within 5 minutes.
On demand, on call, ready to roll. I like that. 5 minutes, you were here.
I was here in 5 minutes. You told me I have 5 minutes, so we're going to roll through a bunch of topics, but very busy time for NC State wrestling. You're actually going out. I think we could mention it. You're going to go to the airport, pick up a recruit.
Yes.
You enjoy having these guys on campus, obviously. What do you like to show off about NC State?
Well, yeah, great question. There's a lot to show here. Obviously, the facilities is intriguing to most people, and seeing what we do day to day, what we have to work with, and we're fortunate enough to have some first-class facilities and resources in play for these guys. But I think the big thing is showing them the talent itself. You know, Raleigh's a special place to live. There's a lot going on right now, and getting people to really understand it in a short period of time, I think sometimes it's hard to do. So, you know, we got our certain places we like to go, show them some hot spots, good places to eat, and I think after seeing that, it's a no-brainer where you need to be.
Signing day is coming in November, so you guys are kind of wrapping it up here. You know, again, NCAA rules, we can't talk about who has committed, but you guys feel very good about this incoming class and hoping, you know, you can get some more guys here.
Absolutely. Closing out right now with some of the visits we got going on. The coaching staff's worked extremely hard getting these kids to campus, and we are looking forward to the signing date coming up. And I'm confident we'll put together another first-class group of kids that fit our philosophy and continue to add on and build on what we've created already.
You mentioned that getting guys to campus, a little bit of a, you know, tricky fall. We had a hurricane come in. You had to cancel some stuff, but just like every other team around here and a lot like people in North Carolina, you guys have adjusted and feel like, are things back to normal now?
Absolutely. The good thing about that is you know where you stand in the recruiting process with these guys, because if they were willing to come back and reschedule, then you know they're serious about their interest in our program, and ultimately that's what we want. We want kids that are here looking at us because of the academics, the process that we've gone through to build the program, and the kind of people they're going to have to train with, and our coaching staff. So yeah, I guess it was a good thing. You know, it was unfortunate when it happened, but we were able to not waste anybody's time and resources. And a couple kids that decide to come back, they're the ones at the end of the day that fit our philosophy more than anybody.
And last time I got to talk to you, probably the last time you returned a text of mine, but we've released the schedule.
Yes. You know, I have you on silent.
I know. I told someone the other day.
You text me so many times.
I think he blocked me, but that's cool. I mean,
call me. You know, you're like these guys on the team. You pick up the phone and call me. I like talking to you.
You're right. I do.
The only time you talk to me is on this podcast.
True. People think we have this great rapport. We never talk to each other.
We just text. That's not true. You can't take my sarcasm anymore. You got soft ever since you got married.
Going back to the schedule. Feedback, comments, what have you heard? How much are people excited about all these great duels coming in Reynolds?
I think it's going to be a great schedule. It fits our team where we're at as far as the program. We're going to be young again, so I think our schedule fits our needs, and that's most important to me, is putting what we need on the schedule for the guys that are coming back, returning. We see a lot of different conferences this year. We're going to see the Big Ten quite a bit. We go to some hostile places. That's ultimately what I want. I want to be battle tested mentally, physically. I want to travel, go through some adversity. So I think we hit all that kind of stuff through the season. And then also, we want to have some premier matches here on campus, and we're going to be able to do that. We'll get Nebraska at home early. We're going to have, obviously, the ACC duels that we get to host here are going to be really good. And then West Virginia is a new add-on from previous years, so that'll be another good Big 12 team that we get to test our skills against. And then going down to the South Beach duels, we'll see 2 Big 10 teams there and a couple other, obviously, seeing Branch from Wyoming, who does a great job, has a lot of great kids on his team. So that'll be a true test for us that weekend as well.
And talking about that schedule, please go buy those season tickets. Go to gopack.com/buy tickets. But schedule, that means practice has started. What's the vibe like in the practice room?
It's been good. Our mentality has grown to more what I'm liking and wanting out of our freshmen, and that's been the biggest thing for us. Is sometimes it's a transition from high school to college on expectations of what hard work really is, and it can be some growing pains through that. And these guys have done a great job understanding what we want and continue to be coachable and working with us and pushing themselves beyond their comfort zone. And I think that's what makes a program grow and guys get better. And that's what we have right now. And I'm happy to see the effort that these guys put through and their willingness to do that. And we got to continue to push those guys now on the technical side of things. And that's what we'll transition into now, is a lot of technical stuff as we get ready to compete in the next month.
Great way to start the season. Just announced Tariq Wilson has been invited and accepted an invite to the NWCA All-Star Classic. 5th straight year NC State's making an appearance at this event. Tariq has a rematch with the NCAA final, Seth Gross. What goes into that decision of deciding, he got invited, but actually going out there and competing like that?
It's great for him. I think it's obviously great for our program to continue to compete in that. The NWCA does a phenomenal job. Troy Nickerson, Northern Colorado, is continuing to build his program. So to get on his campus and showcase NC State, I think it's going to be a great event. At the end of the day, it comes down to what's best for our guys on our roster. This was what was best for Tariq Wilson, and it's going to help him get better and prepare him more than ever come the NCAAs. And it's one of those, anytime you get a chance to wrestle a defending national champ, you got to be ready to go. It's going to sharpen him up in the room right now, keep him motivated, and we need that. We need him zoned in, focused, and he's been doing that. It'll be one of those, first time down to weight. I think they get a little bit of a weight allowance. They're not actually going to wrestle down at 33. I think it's 135.4 because Seth Gross got a dual meet the following weekend, so they're going to get that weight allowance in there. So technically it would actually be up at 141, but they're going to weigh in a little bit overweight. We also had the opportunity with Hayden, but we felt it was best in his schedule to focus on the World Championship. So that was something, unfortunately, we had to decline and get him focused and ready for UW23.
You talk about U23s, Hayden and Sean Fowles now both going out there, both going to compete. It's during the season, so they're training freestyle, college is folk style. How's that going to fit into your schedule with those two?
We're balancing the two right now. Those guys are both senior level guys, so they know what it takes. They got a great background already for college wrestling. That'll make it that much better for them that they can focus in on some freestyle stuff. So we're balancing the two right now. They're about 50-50 on it. And then we'll zone right in, go right straight folk style right after the World Championships.
And obviously more freestyle. The World Championships are coming up. Nick Wisdowski will be at 125, but Nick, obviously, he left this week. Obi Blanc left this week. They're going to Germany to train, but also Michael Macchiavello and Jacob Kasper from the Wolfpack RTC. All 4 guys going to Germany to get Nick ready for the World Championships. How's that for your program to have 4 guys going and competing and training like that?
It's big. That's a great crew right there heading overseas. I think Nick was joking with Mock, telling him you need to get his Southwest frequent flyer miles, and Mock was like, what do you mean? I didn't think we were flying Southwest to Germany. So that was the running joke with those guys. But it's been good. Keeping Nick relaxed, loose, having that group going overseas with him is big. We'll follow up with a huge group of people coming from New York, Raleigh. I know there's a lot of people going out there to support him, but at the end of the day, we want to be there to watch him accomplish his goals. And there's been a lot of people that have helped him along the way, and we want to be there firsthand to watch this event. But it's been big. It's been very helpful and awareness for our program. Nick's put a lot of hard work time with all those other guys continuing to grow, and Obi's countless hours behind the scenes coaching Nick. He spent a lot of time on the road away from his family, so we're very appreciative to that. And it's been a sacrifice for everybody. And nothing great comes without putting some type of sacrifice to it. And all those guys are getting better for it, and our program's getting better. So we're very appreciative and thankful for what those guys are doing for NC State Wrestling right now in our Wolfpack Wrestling Club.
Pat, is a great wrap-up. I kept it to 10 minutes. If anybody sees a big pickup truck with the license plate to skip barreling down the highway, get out of the way. Man's got to get to the airport.
We're going first class on this trip. Well, we'll lay out the red carpet, so see if we can get it done today.
Now stay tuned to our 2 featured interviews in this episode of the Beck Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. Backed by popular demand, our Hidden Heroes segment returns. And this episode, we feature the equipment manager for the NC State wrestling team, Brad Beauregard. Brad, welcome to the podcast. After some nagging by you, glad I could finally feature you on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I also appreciate a tough last name. As everybody knows, I suck at pronouncing names, but I nailed that one. Brad Beauregard.
That's it. Most people don't get it. You got it.
What is that, Spanish?
I think it's French. Perhaps. I don't speak French, but I've been told.
Okay. Well, good start. When you talk about the behind-the-scenes people in the program, I think your job description fits that to a mold. They have you over here in WB in some kind of bunker, but right in the flow of traffic for all the guys that come by and get their gear. And I like to refer to you as the Santa Claus of the Wolfpack Wrestling program, always bringing gifts and bags of gear to the guys. And some of us lucky enough to be working with the Wolfpack Wrestling program. I asked this question to all of our hidden heroes, but when I said you were the equipment manager, how would you describe that role and what you do for the wrestling team?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there's a couple parts to it, I guess. In preparation-wise, probably the part that everyone sort of sees and kind of, really likes to talk about is the ordering of it and picking through it and the catalogs and stuff like that. So we're actually in the middle right now of picking items and ordering for next year. So by November 1st, we'll have all the orders in for essentially you forecast what the team will kind of look like for next year based on who's graduating and whatnot. So we'll order that all at the end of this month to come in July and then give out next October. So
that's a very long process, ordering in November.
Yeah, especially because, wrestling official practice just started recently. And so right when we just gave the guys all of their gear last Wednesday. And so, the Monday of that week, we were looking at samples. And then next Monday, I'll sit down with Pat and Melissa and really hammer out what we're ordering. So you got to there's a lot of multitasking involved with you got to think about what's going on at the moment, but also we can't lose track of next year because, we take feedback quickly just so that we know what we can order. And so that's kind of the glamorous part of it, especially the issuing of it and getting all the gifts you said, the guys love getting that stuff from me. On the flip side, probably the dirty part of it, no pun intended, is the laundry aspect of it. These guys, they'll practice twice a day, lift in the mornings, practicing at night, practicing on Saturday mornings. So all of those workouts, someone's got to wash that stuff. And so that's me, so I'll come in at 8 o'clock, wash the stuff from that morning. Guys will work out, do, technique throughout the day, get that stuff going. And then sometimes I'll stay at night to get it going, but otherwise that laundry's waiting for me the next day. And usually Saturday or Sunday, one of those days, you're coming in for a couple hours to get the laundry done. So a lot of people that think that the job is pretty glamorous and you just wear cool Ultra Boosts all the time and buy cool things, that's the part they don't want to think about is how much laundry. And wrestlers aren't the cleanest people.
Do wrestlers sweat?
The wrestlers sweat more than I could have ever imagined. I've worked football. I've worked rugby. Pretty, intense contact sports, but the laundry for wrestling is like nothing you've ever seen before.
We joke this is your first podcast interview, but you're off to a great start because you have segued into my first question. Since I called you the Team Santa Claus, give us a rundown of the gear the guys get once practice gets underway.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So they got a lot. we'll say, is kind of like a mix of practice stuff and then stuff they just kind of wear around. As far as practice stuff goes, they got, short sleeve, long sleeve t-shirts and kind of a Climalite feel. They got short sleeve, long sleeve t-shirts that are like kind of more cotton feeling. They got crew neck sweatshirts, hooded sweatshirts, thin joggers, thicker sweatpants. They got these really, really like thick Clima Heat, long tights, thin long tights, half tights, thick half tights, stuff to walk around in. They'll get, beanies, hats. We did a gray quarter zip. We did a white kind of t-shirt feeling hoodie. We'll do a travel suit. That's really cool. It's super nice and embroidered NC State wrestling. And we brand wrestling on everything. Obviously we use Block S logo, Wolfhead logo and everything like that. But Pat, especially in particular, wants people to wear wrestling proudly. People see him, they know it's one thing. Of course, we're proud to be NC State Wolfpack, but then also he wants them to know, these guys are part of the wrestling team, show that at all times. So everything that we give out basically says NC State and also says wrestling. They got, each of the returners had 2 pairs of wrestling shoes they picked out. We did travel shoes, which are custom red and black Alpha Bounces. The guys got slides just to kick around in. They each start off with a pack of socks, white socks, black socks. We'll do fancy socks later. For matches.
Who provided Boykin socks?
Boykin actually went rogue.
First of all, I can't imagine that, but
I distinctly remember actually watching it at home when they were at NCAA's streaming it. And, I got a pretty big TV at home. And so I was looking and real clear in my shot was Boykin and with like socks with like bananas on them or something. And just shaking my head. Now, granted, it's not a rule violation or anything. Socks don't really matter. But
he said it was good luck.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what he wants to do, as long as there's no Nike swoosh on it, we're fine with that.
And of course, all that gear is given out and provided by Adidas. How do you work with Adidas to get the team gear?
Yeah, so our rep, Jordan Green, is probably one of the best reps I've worked with.
Shout out to Chops, former men's basketball manager. We go back a long way.
Yeah, a lot of, despite, wherever I've worked, Jordan is, he's real hands-on. It helps that he lives in Raleigh. So, anytime we need him, whether it's a phone call or a text, he'll just show up if it seems important enough, and he wants to like deal directly with it. He'll show up right away. A lot of this stuff is a lot of website based, which is nice. They didn't always used to be that way. But now a lot of the things we can just log right on to our personal sort of Adidas site with the team gear, and order it at once, show up in a couple days. The year before, it takes a lot of, preparation. Jordan coming, showing us samples, budgeting out what we need, saving enough money to order throughout the year. And then we'll place it online or place custom stuff through an order form with him. Which that can get kind of hairy. You're submitting requests for custom artwork. You're waiting for that to get back, getting graphic codes, filling out the right forms. It can be an intense process. And so that's a lot of the team gear, the sweats, the shirts, things like that. And on the other side, we work a lot with Adidas Wrestling, Outer Circle, which I believe is based in Pennsylvania. And our rep with that is Daryl McDonough, and also Tom Scully, the president of Adidas Wrestling. And he will work with them directly for singlets and custom sweats and stuff through them, custom headgear, all the shoes. And they're really great. That's an email or a phone call, and that stuff's here in 2 days.
That's what you kind of mentioned. A lot of people like our singlets. Good look. I know you take a lot of pride. Pat takes a lot of pride in the singlets too. How are the singlets designed? How do those come together?
So a lot of those come, just straight off the top of Pat's head. He'll come up with something. He'll come to me, and we'll kind of describe what we want to Daryl. And then Daryl's got a team of artists, that he'll get to kind of put what we want, into fruition. And a lot of times they hit the nail on the head. Sometimes, like this year, we wanted to come up with a new look, because obviously we changed to the Wolfpack font. And so that was an email to Daryl saying, hey, we want to sort of design just a new look,
we're not going to ruin that look yet.
Exactly.
We're going to wait for pictures.
And, we had some ideas, but then a lot of that is just, hey, Daryl, like tell your guys to just come up with something cool, like something that we haven't seen, something that no teams don't really do. come up with that, send it to us, and then we'll talk through it. And they did those. So we got one particular design that's unique that's coming on the way. And then we're trying to, cement a new design, I guess. Our big thing in the past was the big wolf head on the side of the singlet. And so now we're trying to come up with a new standard. So we got potentially, we should have 3 more singlets coming this year, depending on what we're ready to go with.
Great way to sell some season tickets. If you have not bought them yet, go to gopack.com, see these singlets in Reynolds. But I know a lot of our guys think they also have some style. I notice guys are wearing all kinds of different colored shoes. How does shoe selection work?
So this year was, I like to give the guys a lot of freedom this past year. The freshmen, obviously, I won't really get to know them until they get here. So we kind of start them off in just a standard Matt Wizard or a black Combat Speed or something like that. But the guys, they all came in for about a week's time. They just popped in the equipment room. I had all the samples laid up of every model that Adidas makes, and I let them pick 2. So no matter who you were on the team, you're returning All-American, never wrestled a match last year or whatever, you come in, you pick 2 pairs of shoes, and as long as you do right by me and everyone, you're working hard on the team, I have no problem getting people exactly what they want.
Do 2 pairs of shoes last a guy the whole season?
It depends. For the most part, I would say, yeah. Our guys, I don't know if it's all wrestlers. I've only ever worked with this team, but our guys in particular don't get too greedy. And they really feel like they need to stretch their gear a lot. They're pretty appreciative of everything I give them. So, occasionally I'll walk into practice and see guys with just busted shoes. And I'm like, hey, you can come ask for another pair, and, that's usually when we'll move into the 3rd pair or something like that. 2 pairs last pretty long. But we don't hesitate to go 3 pairs, 4 pairs, depending on the guy.
Now, I always like it. I get to go to the NCAA, so I see this from my side. But NCAA time comes, travel party, guys, coaches, staff. We get some additional gear, it's in the budget and all that. We always go to cold places. I tell Pat we should go somewhere else, but we're always up in cold. So you guys always look it up with a nice jacket or something. How does NCAA tournament stuff come about?
So a lot of stuff with that, that's keeping our eyes on Adidas.com, seeing, on Twitter to see what new lines are coming out with Adidas. And we kind of push it right up as far as we can so that whatever's the newest, latest, and greatest Adidas items, we'll buy it up for the whole team, whoever's going. So 10 guys the past couple of years plus a handful of staff. And so, yeah, last year they came out with the new ZNE travel suit. So we bought that up for the team, embroidered it special with, wolf head wrestling, threw the NCAA patch on it from that tournament. We have a great, relationship with Emblem Source that they created the patches for us and got them to us fast. And so, it's a couple weeks turnaround between ACCs, and then we try to be ready, guessing who's going to qualify and go. But yeah, so we'll do like a jacket or something like that. They came out with the new NMD STLTs last year. So first colorway that dropped, black and gray pair. It was ready. We bought it for the whole team. So it's kind of like a cool thing for us. We show up to the NCAA tournament with something that we know no one else has because it just came out and no one's buying that for the whole team except for us.
Going to really put you on the spot here because I didn't ask you this before, but if I allowed fans to submit questions, which I do not, I'm sure the first thing they would ask you is where can they purchase NC State wrestling specific gear?
So we are very, very hardworking at trying to make that more of a regular reality. We did an online store last year before NCAA's, and it worked really well. We offered 3 different kinds of 3 different colored t-shirts, I think, a hoodie, I think a women's t-shirt as well. And that, like I said, that I think everything sold pretty well. Tons of fans were happy. I still see people come visit WB. They'll take them back to the equipment room, and I see them wearing stuff from that sale. And so we want to try and do that more often. Now there's a lot of logistics that go into it. I know the dream was to get it done, sometime in the fall before Christmas. We don't know if we're going to be able to do that this year. But from working with that company, Business Impact Group, last year and setting up that online store and how easy it was with them, we're definitely going to do that again, hopefully, for NCAAs. And then in the coming years, do that hopefully 2-3 times a year, just so, people want our stuff. We would love for them to have them. For me, I get a lot of requests of people that want it. I can't, the relationship with me and Adidas is me and the team. I get Adidas stuff for the team strictly. So I get a lot of requests of people that want to buy it from me. It's not really how we operate. So we're working really hard to try and make that a reality.
You're a very popular guy. People want this wrestling gear. They know you have it, so they just come and ask.
They do, yeah. A lot of Twitter requests. People find me on Twitter and ask for it very politely, and so I have to politely decline and tell them things are coming.
But you're also telling me you're going to reappear on this podcast because you're going to drop this website, and all our fans are going to be happy. So you basically just booked yourself for a second interview.
I suppose I did. Yep, I will definitely be on I'll come on and promote the website when we get that off the ground.
Brad, thanks for taking the time today to talk to us about your role with the NC State wrestling team. It's always cool I know what goes on behind the scenes, but I think our fans really appreciate who is behind the scenes, what they're doing, and all of us have a story to tell too, and how we help the program, and the program really helps us in what we're doing. So thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'll be on anytime.
And thank you once again to our anonymous donor for sponsoring our Hidden Hero segment. This has been a tremendous addition to the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast, giving our fans a chance to understand just how many different people have roles in supporting the Wolfpack Wrestling program. If you would like to donate anything to this podcast, please reach out to us on Twitter or email me directly. I love to correspond with our fans. And with our next donation, I look forward to seeing what ideas that individual will have, as I'll incorporate your gifts into this podcast. And you can reach both Pat and myself on Twitter at PackWrestle. And my email is bcreinha@ncsu.edu. Our next guest on the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast is somebody outside of the Wolfpack Wrestling program, but somebody that's very familiar with what NC State has been doing over the last few years, and somebody that has a very watchful eye on all of college wrestling. Earl Smith from the openmat.com joins us today via Skype. Earl, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today about some of the preseason rankings.
Thanks for giving me a call, Brian. I appreciate it.
And all of the preseason national rankings have started to come out over the last few weeks. First, here on our podcast, we talked to Flow Wrestling about their preseason ACC rankings. And today, we have Earl to talk us through the openmat.com's preseason national rankings. We're going to be talking about where the Wolfpack individual sits and just how the ACC looks overall nationally. Earl, I guess we should first start with, what is your role with the openmat.com, and what is your background in covering NCAA wrestling?
Okay, so I am currently the editor and head writer for the Open Mat. This is a position that I've held since May. Originally, I started a website on my own called D1 College Wrestling about 10 or 11 years ago, and have been covering NCAA and ACC wrestling since then. I live in Virginia, ACC country, so I've been to most of the ACC tournaments over that time. And last year, I started with the Open Mat on a part-time basis, doing high school coverage and rankings. And now since May, I have been full-time as an editor, and this will be my first college season with the website.
And as I said, I really wanted to dive into where you ranked NC State's wrestlers in your top 20 at each weight class. But first, let's start with a general NCAA wrestling question. First official practices start this week, and in some of the research I did about the Open Mat's rankings, I noticed 7 of the 10 national champions from a year ago are returning. Unfortunately for NC State, our national champion at 197, Michael Macchiavello, has moved on and is now training full-time at the Wolfpack's RTC. But on a national level, with so many national champions returning, how exciting of an upcoming season do you see this year?
I think it's going to be very exciting. Penn State is, I guess, going to be the team to beat, at least, with Ohio State, Iowa, NC State, Michigan, the same teams that were at the top, chasing after them as well. And I always think it's fun when you have a lot of returning NCAA champions, because if you're looking at the rankings now, you're looking at a defending champion, a number 1 ranked guy. And, my thinking is I don't see how that guy can lose, but inevitably every year there's going to be, 2 or 3 of those guys that end up getting beat somehow. So, that's exciting for me.
And back to NC State, at the Open Mat, you guys cover a ton of high school wrestling in addition to college. So a lot of the guys that have put on NC State singlet, you guys were familiar with before they even got to campus. But from a national publications perspective, can you speak to the job that NC State has done over the last few years? And I'm talking about 3 national champions, 11 All-Americans, 5 straight top 28 NCAA finishes, and last season, the first team trophy in school history with the 4th place NCAA finish. So how do you guys perceive NC State now?
It's just incredible. I think that their best days are still ahead of them, even with a 4th place finish last year. If you look at the recruiting rankings and just the kids that continue to be brought in, it's very impressive. And they have where I don't know if we're able to officially talk about this, but, we have a bunch of guys that look like they've committed already for the 2019 recruiting class, even into 2020. So, it looks like it's only going to get better. I'm going to share this story with you that I talked to a coach recently, and we'll just say he's in the region, and he told me about when he heard that NC State hired Pat Popolizio. He turned to one of his assistants and said, "Oh man, we're in trouble." And the assistant was kind of like, I don't know about that. But he's like, no, I know him. He's going to turn that program around. And I think that kind of speaks to what kind of respect he has in the coaching community, because that was at Binghamton when he had a little bit of success, started to, turn the program around. But I don't think he was a household name at that point.
Going back to those recruits, I really appreciate you not naming names, as unfortunately, they committed. We cannot talk about who has committed, but NC State definitely hitting hard the recruiting trail. But I think we're going to roll right into your rankings, which you guys published on your site last week. For any fans that want to go see, please visit theopenmat.com. And I'll start with talking about who from NC State you have ranked and like to get your opinion. So obviously, you got to start at 125. Redshirt senior for NC State, Sean Fowles, ACC champion last year, 3-time NCAA qualifier. You have him right on the border of All-American status. 2 years ago, he was 1 win away. Last year, we didn't really pub it up a little bit, but he was injured at the NCAAs and went 1-2. But you have him seeded number 9 to start the season. Talk about how you see Sean and maybe about 125 overall.
125, they have a couple of the longtime stalwarts have moved on. With Nathan Tomasello and Darian Cruz, both former NCAA champions. So there's going to be a little bit of changing of the guard up top. Sean, I have him in at 9 right now. That's going to be directly behind Louis Hayes from Virginia, who ended his season. However, Sean defeated him at the ACC tournament. He earned a 5 seed going into nationals. So that is a 9 ranking right now, but I would not be shocked if he was, much higher by the time, the NCAA tournament rolls around and when it's all said and done, really.
And moving up to 133, I'm very biased, obviously, with NC State, but one of the top stories of last year's tournament was the performance of Tariq Wilson. He was a redshirt freshman last year, unseeded. He had 3 top 5 upsets of seeds in the tournament, finished 3rd at the NCAA. So you slotted him right at number 3 to start the year at 133. Both finalists from that weight class have returned. ACC, it's really different at 133 in the ACC this year. 6 qualifiers last year, but Tariq's the only one that's returning. We're going to see a lot of new faces at 133, but talk about just Tariq at 133 and obviously starting off number 3 in the year.
Yeah, it's funny. Last week I did an article breaking down the wrestlers that were unseeded All-Americans at Nationals last year. So I really looked into his record, and he took a lot of losses to those guys you mentioned, those veterans in the ACC like Dom Four Eyes from Pittsburgh and Gustafson from Virginia Tech. Mueller, who's not going to be wrestling this year for Virginia. So his record to people who may have been doing the seeding didn't look impressive per se going into nationals, but you could tell by his results that he did improve as the year went on. So there were other wrestlers that I analyzed who their performance at nationals may have been a little bit fluky or lucky, but based on what I saw from him, how he battled with the top guys like Seth Gross and beating Pletcher, I would expect him to be up there with those guys as well. And being a freshman, I'm sure he has more room to grow, and we're probably only going to see a better version of him this year.
Up at 141, in the ACC at least, this weight class has really cleaned out from last year too. I like to joke, Kevin Jack is no longer an 8-year starter at NC State in that weight class. So for the first time in a very long time, NC State's going to have to find a replacement at 141. And in your rankings in the ACC, you only have one ACC wrestler ranked, and that's UVA's guy at number 20. So a lot of movement at 141 in the ACC. Say, for example, I think one of the leading candidates for NC State right now at that weight class could be Jamal Morris. He's a 2-time NCAA qualifier. Now, he was down at 133 when he did that. He was up at 49 last year, making the move down to 141, but wide open 141 in the ACC, and some of the top guys graduated last year.
Yeah, that's correct. And, he's a guy I studied really hard when doing the rankings, and I kind of look at these, and he was a guy I assumed I would have in the top 20. Once I actually put them together, it didn't work out that way, but I would say he was very close, and it certainly wouldn't be surprising if he, works his way in early. And, based on the track record of the program now, who knows what's the limit for him at 141, especially, as you said, with the weight class kind of clearing out in the ACC.
And up at 149, NC State will have a new starter this year. Transfer, Justin Oliver came to NC State from Central Michigan. He was a 2016 All-American at 149. In the last 2 years, he was one win away from All-American honor. So I think before we talk about the overall look of 149, NC State fans aren't familiar with Justin Oliver. Tell us a little bit about him.
So he wrestled for Central Michigan for his first 3 years. He's from Davison High School, which has produced NCAA champions Brent Metcalf, John Reeder, Paul Donahoe. Very good program in Michigan. He's been around, had success at the Midlands. And I would say 149 out of all the weight classes nationally, that is really kind of up for grabs. I have, my top 3 is Matt Kolodzik, Micah Jordan, Anthony Ashnault. With all due respect to those guys, at this point in time, none of those guys are the clear-cut favorite like we have at some of the other weight classes. So if you're going to get a weight class where, Justin Oliver is contending for a national title, this is a weight class where you could see something like that.
And just speaking in the ACC in this weight class, you have 4 guys ranked in the top 20. So this is one of the top weights in the ACC. Mitch Finesilver from Duke, he's moving down from 157, but he was top 10 all last year. Austin O'Connor from UNC, he redshirted last year, but very highly regarded freshman. And you have Blease from Virginia Tech, who is a transfer in, but is really good. So this is a very good weight class in the ACC.
Yeah, you're going to see some good competition in the conference. There may be a loss or two that Oliver takes. I still see him being the class of that weight, but he may take 1 or 2 from those guys. O'Connor is a very good freshman that he could rise up above a couple of the maybe Blease or Finesilver by the year end, actually.
And going to move up to 157. NC State fans are very familiar with your highest ranked guy there. Hayden Hidley, NCAA finalist as a redshirt freshman, went undefeated, was the number 1 seed, and he lost to Penn State's Nolf, who everybody, he's one of the national contenders for top collegiate wrestler. But in the ACC, you have 3 guys in the top 12. So 157, another very loaded weight class here. But just talk about Hayden. He had, some people didn't expect him to. He was unranked in a lot of the preseason stuff last year, worked his way up, had a lot of solid wins, and definitely deserves that number 2 ranking.
Yeah, definitely. And he was a guy, I don't want to, well, I was going to say I don't want to toot my own horn, but I guess I will since I'm talking. I didn't do college rankings last year, but I assumed he would be a guy that would have been in the rankings preseason. He wasn't, but I was familiar with him. I've seen him a lot and was a big fan. I'm not going to say I expected him to be undefeated and make the NCAA finals, but I expected a big year for him. So, he's only going to get better. I'd really look forward to seeing a rematch between him and Nolf, and, just to see how much he's grown in that second year. And then, as you mentioned, in the ACC, you have Kennedy Monday from North Carolina. He has great bloodlines, being the son of Kennedy Monday. And, he's just a gigantic 157-pounder. And then Pittsburgh's Taylor Romani, he was an ACC champion 2 years ago, and he's a real funky kid. He can, pin you before you know it. He can get you in some weird stuff. So that'll be a fun weight class in the ACC.
And going up to 165, NC State has to replace one of its starters. So you do not have anybody from NC State ranked at 165, but I believe redshirt sophomore Thomas Bullard, he's penciled in right now, and he was an NCAA qualifier at 157 as a true freshman, redshirted last season, so maybe a little bit under the radar to start this season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And again, he was one that just looking at his name and knowing his history, I thought he would maybe in the top 20 for the rankings. But again, it didn't work out that way. You have Pittsburgh's Jake Wenzel at number 19. That's definitely a place he could sneak in at some point. You're also going to have in the conference Mekhi Lewis, who just won a junior world championship for Virginia Tech. So he's going to be a tough one to overcome. And I kind of was, I tend to be cautious with ranking freshmen. I have him at 13, but I definitely could see him higher than that as the year progresses.
Up at 174, you did get a Bullard in there. We have redshirt sophomore Daniel Bullard. You slated him at number 16 to start the season. And 174, it was going to be a little bit of a question mark coming in. You have Matt Finesilver at 19. And very late, Virginia Tech said McFadden is going to move up to 174. So you kind of put him at number 5 nationally, top of the ACC. So that kind of changed your rankings a little bit, I would say. But Daniel Bullard, he was a NCAA qualifier last year. So another very solid person in the NC State lineup. How do you see 174 playing out?
Yeah, 174 is going to be pretty interesting nationally because the top 8 guys there are all returning All-Americans at various weights. So that's kind of like what I said before. Just looking at it on paper, it's like nobody's ever going to penetrate that top 8, but invariably that happens. So Daniel Bullard's a kid that could do that, and I could see him moving up. It will be very tough to get on the podium at that weight class, more than others.
And we talked about 149 and 157 being very tough. 184 might be the premier weight class in the ACC this year. In the preseason, you have 3 guys ranked in the top 10. You have 5 guys ranked in the top 20 just from the ACC. I'm going to talk about redshirt sophomore Nick Reenan, redshirted last year, made it to Final X, just had a tremendous offseason. You started him out at number 10. Might be one of the highest ranked guys who was a redshirt last year falling in, especially he's moving up a weight class. Could you talk about where you see Nick and just how he deserves that number 10 seed?
Yeah, that one was really difficult for me to judge exactly where to put him in at, because he had an excellent redshirt season. He had a win over Zach Savatsky from Virginia Tech, who I have in at number 4, and then even improved, as you mentioned, from that point with his performance at Final X and all the qualifiers. So I have him at 10, but I really think that's kind of conservative. I tend not to drop returning All-Americans above guys who haven't All-American unless, there's some special circumstance around that. So you mentioned there's also Chip Ness from North Carolina at 7. That's a spot I could see, Nick getting above as well. But, really kind of the sky's the limit of this weight class.
And I think the two upper weights in the ACC, they both really cleared out. 197, 285. We're going to be seeing a lot of new faces. Virginia Tech, for example, has 2 guys that transferred in, penciled in to be starters. But I'm going to start at 197. It looks like Malik McDonald will get it penciled in there for NC State. And you actually had him at heavyweight. And like I said, there's so much movement in these rankings, guys going in and out. But say Malik gets the starting spot for 197. Where do you see him in that weight class?
Yeah, I would see him probably between 14th and 17th to start with. But again, as you mentioned, that's all. 197 and heavyweight are always funny weight classes just because you have so many seniors there and they always clear out. So, he's definitely a guy that, has been around, has, had some share of, good wins over the years. So he could definitely move up from that, 14 to 17th spot.
And going up to 285, NC State. Battle of true freshmen it's looking at right now. Colin Lawler, Deontay Wilson. I will say you usually, and you mentioned it before, you tend not to rank true freshmen. So a lot's going to be seen. But 285 in the ACC, we got one new face, Billy Miller, transfer from Virginia Tech. North Carolina heavyweight, the only other person ranked there. So I would think 285 is a little bit wide open in the ACC and maybe a little more nationally too, as obviously, you have Snyder and Kuhn both graduating. What do you think you see out of 285?
Yeah, you mentioned it has cleared out a bit, and I think everybody nationally is looking to see what true freshman Gable Steveson has at Minnesota. He's going to be one of those rare freshmen that jumps in and probably contends for a national title. Otherwise, through the ACC, we have Billy Miller in there. From what I understand, he won't be available for the first semester for Virginia Tech. But Corey Daniel as well, he's been around, qualified a couple times for the NCAA tournament. So it is if a freshman heavyweight could qualify for the NCAA tournament, maybe this would be the year at that weight class.
And NC State, you have a lot of we just went over everybody a lot in the starting lineup rank, but NC State does have 6 new starters this year. How do you see the Wolfpack playing out this season? I really see a good year for them. As we went through that lineup, I think more often than not, I was kind of conservative with them. So you could see a Nick Reenan jump up to be, top 3. You can see some Sean Fowles, jump up. So that team ranking that I have definitely is kind of conservative at that point. And then if you throw in, some of the guys that are freshmen or inexperienced, I really see a good year for them nationally. The ACC tournament, I always like to joke that, you can have just 1 or 2 matches that turns around the tournament. There have been plenty of years that I've went and
thought a particular team was maybe the third or fourth best team in the conference, they get an upset or two, and next thing you know, they're in first place. So the ACC tournament's always a little wacky just because it's such a small tournament.
Earl, great to catch up. I'm such a stat geek. I like talking preseason rankings. Pat hates talking preseason rankings. So it's great it was great to have someone on, break this stuff down. Before I let you go, I want you plug your website, plug your social media so our fans can follow you guys throughout the season.
Okay, thanks. It's theopenmat.com, and it's the Open Mat on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm on Twitter at Earl of TOM, which is the Open Mat. I love to talk wrestling, so if you want to shoot me a tweet and ask why a certain guy is ranked where, I'm free to discuss that. But come and check out the website. Got a lot of college content coming out, of course, with the season coming up less than a month now. So there's just going to be more and more as we're getting closer to that time.
Earl, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Maybe, as the season progresses, we'll catch up with you and see where our guys are ranking maybe midway through the year.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I want to thank everybody for listening today. This is your Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast covering all things NC State wrestling. Until next time, Wolfpack wrestling fans, go Pack.
Mentality Pop-Ins podcast is produced by the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, go to MatTalkOnline.com.